as a teacher, you never invite anyone to take over.
Speak up in your
Especially
big
if they're junior high age. It's my absolute pleasure to be here today, and I'm delighted that Audrey invited me, and look forward to having her at camp this week as a spiritual guide to our youth, many of whom are working very hard these days to reconcile spirituality and sexuality, which is not something that I get emotional about this, because certainly gay people of my generation didn't have that luxury, that you had to choose. You could be gay or you could be a member of a conservative Christian faith, and there was no way to reconcile the two. So I spend a lot of my time welcoming religious faiths that are affirming of sexual and gender minorities, and that's part of the progress of making sure that sexual minorities, gender minorities, LGBTQ people are full citizens and persons in this country. So it's an exciting time for us with Camp Firefly. This coming week we'll celebrate our 10th anniversary here in Edmonton. I'll be going to Saskatoon next month for the 5th Camp Firefly in Saskatchewan, and we just had our inaugural camp in Calgary. And if there was ever a place that Camp Firefly is needed for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans youth, it's southern Alberta. So, as the kids, when they came up with the name Firefly, they liked the idea that firefly is a ubiquitous creature, in the sense that you find it everywhere except Antarctica. And I don't want to live in Antarctica, so I thought that's okay, that can be excluded. But that idea that we have this presence is very important. I've just finished writing a book called Youth at Promise: Sexual and Gender Minority Youth in Canada. And I use the phrase sexual and gender minority deliberately because after the Vreen decision in the Supreme Court of Canada case, Vreen versus Alberta in 1998, which granted equality rights to then lesbian and gay Canadians, but in the spirit of the Charter as a living document, it means that all sexual and gender minority persons are citizens in this country. It was very important for me to use that term, just like federal legislation and law also uses linguistic minority or ethnocultural minority. So that idea of seeking space and place with the rights, privileges, and responsibilities of full citizenship is something that I take very seriously. I hold it dear, and I talk to youth about it all the time. Some of the messages that are in the book that I constantly share with the youth with whom I work are basically 5. And so I'm going to just share those before I share a story of one of the youth who's made a tremendous impression on me, as many youth have at Camp Firefly, but I want to share her story today. One of the first messages that I share with youth is that ignorance leads to fear, and fear leads to symbolic and physical violence. And for kids, the symbolic violence in school is the obvious stuff, the name calling, the graffiti on the lockers, but it's also the invisible curriculum. The fact that they're not included in the regular curriculum sends them a very definite message that they don't often count. Kids need to see themselves, all vulnerable youth need to see themselves in the curriculum in our schools. Whether they're sexual and gender minority youth, Aboriginal youth, new immigrant youth, all youth need to have presence in the curriculum. So that's one message. Institutions in this country, and certainly health and education are 2 of them, have been very quick to categorize at-risk youth as though they and their families are the problem. And when I use family, it's family as the youth constructs it. If I'm working with a youth in foster care and their youth worker, and that youth worker is the significant adult in that child's life, that's a family. So what I try to tell them is that sexual and gender minority youth are not the problem. It's heterosexist, sexist, genderist systems and structures that are the problem, and the institutions like schooling and healthcare that perpetuate them. When a teacher will not address homophobic bullying of a child, when a family doctor refuses to give proper attention and care to a transgender youth, that's the problem. So these are the messages that we need to get out, and we need to hold people accountable. One of the ways I'm doing that right now, I've just moved to the Department of Educational Psychology with a very specific purpose. I want to be involved in the education and training of school counselors, school psychologists, and we offer a joint program with the Faculty of Medicine Dentistry. I want to get in there and teach young medical students who will be family doctors about ways they can reach out to sexual and gender minorities. So the more you do this work, the more you live in that intersection of education and health. The other point that I make to school principals and doctors and people in institutions and positions of power is, before you hold sexual and gender minority and other vulnerable youth accountable, hold yourselves accountable. Look at what you're doing, look at what you're not doing, and address the absences in your professional practice. If you are seeing your profession as a teacher or as a doctor, as a vocation, then you have to be there for every youth, and you have to engage in a caring, ethical practice. And a caring, ethical practice is a practice that sees the other person before you see yourself. The other point that is really important to me, I stopped a long time ago using the phrase at-risk youth. That's not to say that there are not many vulnerable youth. We'll have kids come to camp this week who are cutting, who have eating disorders, who have mental health problems, all systemically induced. I do not ignore that. What I try to do now is to turn things upside down and around by finding the youth who are already at promise, the ones who are strong, the ones who somehow found a way forward, and they've had assets, human resources, material resources that have allowed them to grow and develop. And I want to find out how all that works for them and use that to help the youth who are still in need. So that's a big point for me, is that with love, nurturing, and support, youth are at promise, with abilities and capacities that can benefit peers, families as they construct them, and their communities. This is my 36th year in education, and the one thing that I've learned in those years is that youth are my most important teachers. So what I'd like to do now, the kids at camp, I shared this, some of you have heard me say before, my nickname is Susan Lucci. I can cry at the drop of a hat, and the kids, will do something at camp, and the first thing they do is run over with a box of Kleenex for me. You should have had one.
Use your sleeve.
So over the last number of years, I've interviewed more than 100 youth from across Canada. And I want to share Larissa's story. I met Larissa a few years ago when she came to Camp Firefly in Edmonton. And so she started as a camper and then became a youth leader at the camp in Regina just a couple of years ago. And Larissa is, at the time that she told me her story, was 21 years old. She is a two-spirit youth, proud to be a young lesbian, proud of her Aboriginal heritage, and wanting to make a difference difference for Aboriginal youth who come to our camps. So this basically is her story as she shared it, and it's called a found narrative. So what I do, I take all of the transcript from the interview, it could be an hour, 2 hours, and I hunt through the transcript and I lift out a story. And so here is Larissa's story. I'm from Poundmaker Cree Nation, which is about 45 minutes past Battleford, Saskatchewan, going north. I've been a camper at Camp Firefly twice before, once when I was 16 and once again when I was 18. I'm 21 years old now, and I graduated from high school 2 years ago. I've been working for the past year, and in September I'm starting my first year of university. I've registered for fine arts classes, but I'm thinking seriously of studying anthropology. My grandma, who has been in the education system for 30 years, is my biggest inspiration for actually going to university. She always pushed the importance of education, and she loves the arts. I always thought I would be an artist or work in the arts in some way. However, right now I'm drawn to anthropology, which is the study of humans and their behaviors around the world. Anthropology also looks at sexuality and genders, and how, in many cultures, there are not just female and male. I am really interested in this. I came out as a lesbian when I was 15. Coming out for me wasn't such a huge scary thing because I was raised by my uncle, and he's gay. He made my lunches, he braided my hair, he took me to school. When he had boyfriends, he introduced me to them. I just thought it was a normal thing. I never knew there was such a word as gay, and I never knew the words fag or homo. I just didn't know these words. Then, when I started going to school, people would ask, "Oh, is your uncle gay?" And I wondered, what is this gay thing that people are talking about? Also, half of my family living up north is really Catholic, and they'd ask, "Oh, is it true your uncle's gay? Does he have a boyfriend?" And I'd say, "Yeah, he has a boyfriend." I still didn't know what the word gay meant. I just knew that there was love, so being gay was just love to me. This year I'm a youth leader. It's great. All the campers, all the youth in my pod group, and a pod is a group of 6 or 8 youth, have said, "Come back next year. You're the best pod leader." The first year I came to Camp Firefly, I was going to school on the reserve and trying to start a GSA, a Gay Straight Alliance Club. One of my teachers was a really strong ally. I still thank him for so many things that he's done for me. Once he took me to the Breaking the Silence conference at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon. That's when I saw the whole thing about Camp Firefly. It was just out of the corner of my eye. I didn't think too much about it because I thought it wasn't really for me. It didn't seem to be for Aboriginals. When I did go to camp, I struggled with the reality of being the only Aboriginal person there. I remembered thinking, man, there are not a lot of positive role models out there for me. It was hard for me to find myself as a two-spirited person, to know where I fit. That's important because it is what young Aboriginals need. They need a sense of belonging. It's going beyond skin color to explore where you come from, your heritage. That's a big thing for me. It's important for me to talk about it at camp this year because 1/3 of the campers are two-spirited. My second time attending camp, I remember focusing more on how youth leaders interacted with the campers and adult volunteers. I reflected on what I thought a youth leader should be for campers, especially first-timers. I applied to be a youth leader this year because I feel I'm in a very good place in my life right now. I can be there for younger campers. When I took a break away from camp, I did some self-work. I took some training to help me be a facilitator and I've done training so I can work with younger people. This year, my friend who is just coming out and having no end of trouble with his family wanted to come to camp. He is also Aboriginal, and he was really nervous. He said, "I would love to go to Camp Firefly, but would you please come with me? Can you?" For me, that clinched it. I was going to camp. But when he asked his family, his father said, "You can't go because I don't want you coming back gay." However, the youth center helping this youth took him to the campsite for the first day. When he and his youth worker called home, his dad gave in and said, "Okay, you can start camping there." That meant a lot to me. What I noticed this year is a lot more Two-Spirit Aboriginal youth are coming here. They're feeling more comfortable, and I'm really proud of them because they are, in a way, paving the way for others to start feeling more comfortable in their brown queer skin. They're really getting along with everyone. It's really empowering. Still, the past few days at camp have been difficult for me because I'm a youth leader here, and it's about maturing and growing up. Of course, that's going to be a hard thing for anybody. But I also really love this camp. I am going to be a good role model who is very visible. I really feel that I can connect with younger people who have difficulties. When I meet this youth, it's just a matter of giving them time and getting to know them. It's not just laying out the camp rules for them. You have to remember that you are here for them. I think that is one of the strengths as a youth leader that I bring. You have to remember that you're not here for yourself or to portray your own ego. You're here to get to know them and to make sure that they're comfortable and having a good time. I wish that other youth leaders would just understand that while it is important to be a good role model and to get youth organized, it is also important to take the time to get to know the campers and their specific needs. It is important not to see youth as problems. You need to see where they come from, and that really does build better understanding. Of all people, those of us in the LGBTQ community should know how hurtful it is for people to assume things about us and judge us right away. Youth leaders should remember this before they act. To help Camp Firefly grow and be a better place for Two-Spirit youth in our cultures, I would focus on getting the word out about Camp Firefly in places like inner city youth centers. I would also go out to reservations and do presentations. When I was younger and I lived on the reservation, it was really rare to have people come out to our school to speak to us. It would have been good for someone to come and say, "You know, there are places for us." There are places like Camp Firefly out there. Just that invitation would help. It's really sad, but when the encouragement is not there, youth on reservations think this is all they have. They stay stuck in that cycle of the whole colonialism thing. Two-Spirit people who are coming to Camp Firefly need to reach out in their communities. It's a really big thing in the teachings to give back to your own community. So it's important to go back and spread the word so people know what Two-Spirit means. That's what I want to do. So you see the strength and the wisdom and the knowledge and the energy, the compassion, the drive that this young woman has. And she's certainly been a real inspiration for me to strengthen the Two-Spirit presence at all of our camps. The last time we had the camp in Regina, for example, we had Adrian Stimpson, who's a Blackfoot performance artist, and he came and was artist in residence and engaged the youth in performing arts and in drumming. We had a Métis elder come to camp as well. Here in Edmonton, we're very fortunate to have the Two-Spirit Circle of Edmonton, and Elder Ed Lavallee is a wonderful friend of the camp and has come to camp on different occasions. And so what I've learned about the camp is, yes, it's a place where we perhaps prioritize sexual and gender minority issues, but it's a camp that has to operate in the intersections, and it has to be a welcoming space for Aboriginal youth, for youth of color, for youth who live in group homes, for street youth. We have a tremendously growing population of street youth in Edmonton that we often ignore when we're walking along Jasper Avenue and other places that are basically their homes. The other really unfortunate thing is that in Edmonton we're seeing a rise in AIDS, HIV among street youth and among young gay males again. The 1980s is a historical period. They don't remember the AIDS epidemic and the travesty that many of us remember who lost friends to AIDS, HIV during that decade and into the 90s. So there's a tremendous amount of work that the camp is trying to do. It's about education, it's about comprehensive health. I thank the Unitarian Church and the many individuals I see in the crowd who are constant supporters of the camp, and thank you again for inviting me and having me share in this special day with you. Thank you.